r/nosleep. Posted by you/likeeyedid. Check out author's subreddit r/likeeyedid. Death is far too common in my town and I don't know who to trust anymore. You can't run away from death. If it has you in its grip, holding you tight, you won't get away no matter how hard you try. And if you are from the place where I was born, you can't run away from murdering anyone either. Because yesterday, the hunting season in Drenfield had begun. And we weren't hunting animals. You know we'll have to go back eventually, right? Cal finally broke the silence. You might think that my mind was racing, twisting and turning, thinking about what to do and what not to, where to go, and who to leave behind. But no, it wasn't. It was entirely blank. As soon as we drove over the border of the town, my mind was silent. There were so many things I needed to be afraid of. I suppose when you are completely overwhelmed you just shut down. Cal hadn't pushed me so far. He kept looking forward, out into the dark road in front of us. I wasn't even sure where he was driving or if he had a destination in mind at all. I have a month. Well, minus 1 day, I responded. Well, yeah, to be a hunter. But I meant more because of the psychopath that we locked into your bathroom. If we don't go back, we'll have a murder on both our hands in a while. And it won't even count. How long does it take for someone to die of thirst? Approximately 3 to 5 days. But I'm sure someone will find her by then. Okay, I didn't expect such a quick answer. Well, if they do, wouldn't that be worse? She might kill Marcus, I whispered. Now my brain finally began to work again and the thoughts couldn't be stopped. I had no plan. We had no plan. And that was probably the scariest part of it all. My destiny was determined. We found a motel somewhere on the side of a road in the middle of nowhere and decided to stay there for the rest of the night. We were safe. Cal was on no list and I had a month before I would be punished if I didn't kill anyone. Nobody was after us. We were safe. I kept telling myself that, hoping that eventually, I would believe it. But deep down I knew that I was lying to myself. Nobody was really safe during this month. I hadn't slept much the night before but I didn't feel tired. Cal laid down in bed right away so I turned off the lights. Luca? I heard him whisper. Where did your parents go? I swallowed. We were lying in the dark motel room, with only a shimmer of light from a street lamp shining through the thin shades of the only window the room had. I don't know. They didn't tell me, they didn't really say goodbye. Only left a note. I hadn't told him about that before. Of course, he knew that my parents left so they wouldn't witness what would happen in this month of pain and torture, but I suppose it was still weird. They left their teenage son alone. I was never the kind of person to open up much. I mostly kept to myself. Even my closest friends had no idea who I was on the inside, although to be fair, after seeing Mel getting completely kill crazy, I guess I wasn't the only one wearing a mask. Cal, I wanna ask you something but you don't have to answer. He turned over slightly. You wanna know if my mom killed anyone? He blurted out. For a second, I thought he would get mad but he actually sounded quite okay. I kinda guess she didn't, I said, but I don't understand what happened to your father. Was he prey? I regretted those words right after they left my mouth. It was just so disgusting to use that word to describe a person. I've always hated it. She did kill someone. Herself. Now I turned to my left to face him. I guess she thought that would end it. She couldn't bear taking someone's life. Well, that's what my grandmother told me. I was only one when it happened. To be honest, I don't even remember my parents. Cal. The following day my father was murdered. My grandparents were always very open with me when it came to the topic of death. I suppose everyone who grew up in Drenfield is. He breathed out loudly. They told me about the mark he had on his face. The mark of death left by the hunter who came to get him. Apparently, after what my mother did, he was added to the list of prey. I wanted to say something but there were no words that could describe how I was feeling. No words sufficient to demonstrate how sorry I was. But then another thought popped into my head. Wait, I thought your parents passed away recently. Isn't that why you moved back to Drenfield? Yeah, I kinda made it sound like that, but to be honest it was only recently that I convinced my grandparents for us to come back. I wasn't even born when it happened, but now that he told me, a lot more started making sense. An important piece of my family's history, it seemed, was connected to the one of California. You knew who I was the first time we met, didn't you? Now my heart was racing so fast that I thought I might throw up. Suddenly I knew exactly who had killed Cal's parents. A cold shiver went down my spine. Had I made a mistake by trusting them? I suppose it didn't matter. I was already a dead man walking. To my surprise, Cal grabbed my hand and squeezed it so gently and kindly, it didn't feel he had any hate in him. Yes. But I figured out very quickly that you weren't like the others here. We are all bound to Drenfield by blood, not by choice. The following day my decision was clear. Running away was not an option. Especially not with California. I wasn't entirely sure why he had come with me in the first place, but as much as I tried to tell myself to be wary, I still trusted him. After a vending machine breakfast, we were sitting in the car again. "Are you really sure this is what we should do?" Cal asked. "No. It's what I should do. You shouldn't be involved in any of it." "Well buddy," he grinned, "it's too late for that. I'm already on Team Luca." I don't know why, it was probably completely crazy, but some part of me felt content. We certainly wasted some time and money by leaving for only one night if we were going back already, but somehow, now far away from Drenfield, we were both craving to go back. It was a strange sensation, but being away during the season felt worse than being surrounded by the murderous atmosphere. Yeah, my initial instinct was to run away. Get as far from that town of horror as I possibly could and take Cal away from what was about to go down there. Because I had seen enough of it to know that not a single horror movie could compete with the reality of Drenfield, but at least now we had a plan. Even if it wasn't a good one. Well, let's go and catch some hunters. For me, the sight of the town wasn't exactly surprising. Despite being rather young during past hunts, I still remembered them pretty vividly. It looks like an exciting festival as long as you don't know what the true meaning behind all the decorations and events is. For Cal, this was all new. New and frightening. We passed the invisible border into the outskirts of town. While there were decorations hanging from the few houses and children running on the street with plastic toy weapons, it still appeared somewhat normal. Like a neighborhood celebrating Halloween in summer. But I knew the center would be different. My only hope was that the hunters were taking their time. At least two of the hunters were not going for prey just yet, one by choice and one by being tied down with a rope. Why don't we just get the outside world involved? Take pictures? Get help? I wondered why he never asked any questions like that before. That's what most logical people would do. Still, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. California, we live in a town where people like to murder because some hunter healed their children decades ago. A town in which every single person that doesn't obey the rules mysteriously dies. You think if getting someone from the outside to help was an option, we would still live like maniacs? Cal didn't answer. At first, I thought I pissed him off, but I wasn't the reason for his silence. He was distracted by something else. Something that suddenly made him brake the car out of nowhere, almost giving me whiplash. We came to a stop on a street close to the center of town. Only 5 minutes by foot from the marketplace. "What the fuck?" I shouted. There was nothing in front of us. Cal didn't look at me. He suddenly seemed frozen. "Dude, what's wrong? There's nothing on the street." "Not in front of us," he mumbled, and then he pointed his finger to the roof of the car, above. I opened my door and took a step outside. And then I saw what had shocked Cal so much that apparently, his blood started freezing. The first corpse. As we figured out later. This was the first man to die during this year's hunting season. A young man, wearing a sweater from our high school. A rope had been right around his neck and he was hanging down from the traffic light. We couldn't recognize his face because they had put a sack over it with some symbol sprayed on it. Cal stumbled out of the car and immediately fell to his knees as he started puking his guts out on the side of the road. I wanted to go to him, tell him everything was okay. I had seen scenarios like this since I was a child. I should have been somewhat okay, but as Cal had been frozen from the inside at first, now it was my turn. With my eyes glued to the dead body hanging right above my head, my fists were clenched so tight that my nails started digging into my skin. But I couldn't feel the pain. The only thing I could think about was whether that dead person was my friend Marcus. "You fucking assholes. You promised you wouldn't shout, Mel. Do you want me to tape your mouth shut again? You left me here for half a day, you do realize people need to fucking piss, right?" Mel's entire body was trembling with hate. "I know, pray, Luca. You will die. You will die if you keep being such a fucking moron." "I'm sorry, Mel," I said and really meant it. I didn't want to torture her like this, but I couldn't have her go and murder people. "And I will die too. If you keep me locked up here. I am a hunter." Cal stayed quiet the entire time. I thought that Mel would at least verbally attack him, considering her hands were still tied up, but she didn't even look at him. She was completely focused on me. She wanted to manipulate me. If we let her go, she wouldn't simply go and kill one person. She would go through that entire list of prey. That's why we had to stop the hunters. We had to figure out a way to stop this entire mess. It's getting dark. Are you gonna be okay with Mel while I check out the hut? Cal asked. I nodded. But be careful. We need to stop them, at all costs. That's what I kept telling myself when I stood in front of the toy room of my neighbor Toby with matches in one hand and a gallon of gas in the other. It was 3 a.m. and the street was sleeping. The music had stopped hours ago and as far we knew there were no other victims just yet. The toy room was a wooden hut in the backyard of my neighbors. Normally they had some barbecue equipment, toys of Claire's, and other stuff in there. Now it was filled with knives, saws, hammers. All things that normally would be totally normal inside a shed. Except these were all stained with blood. That's what Cal told me. I didn't go into the toy room. I figured I had seen enough gore for one day. When Cal came back earlier this evening, he told me that Toby wasn't around when he went into the hut. He was inside the house with his family. In all honesty, the plan we had wasn't well thought through, but we didn't have that much time. We decided that I would call Toby and invite him over to toast to the month of death with a drink. A drink I had spiked earlier. After he passed out, we tied him up and brought him to a room in the basement. Tomorrow we would figure out what exactly to do with him and Mel and how to keep them under somewhat humane circumstances. We were creating our own little collection of murderers here. I repeat, our plan was not very well thought through, but at least now 2 of the hunters were hidden inside my home. We'd have to think of something to do when people started looking for them, but that was a problem for another day. We wanted to finish this day on a different note. Namely, by sending out a sign into the air by burning down the toy room of that damn Toby Gordon. So that's what brought me to the garden of my neighbors with the gas and the matches to burn down the toy room of that damn Toby Gordon. Cal asked if I could be the one to actually do it because as a hunter I probably wouldn't get in trouble, which was fine with me. Honestly, it felt pretty freeing to watch the fire and to know that I would be going back inside later to tell Toby that his torture hut was gone. I was a naive idiot. I should have known by the smell. I should have known that Cal wasn't to be trusted. As the smoke and the foul smell filled our neighborhood, the Gordons stood outside watching their garden hut burn down. Other neighbors were joining them, attracted by the fire. Nobody seemed to mind it, no, quite the opposite, they were cheering and clapping. Mrs. Gordon was telling everyone how proud she was of her brother. Not only had he found prey so soon into the month and tied them up in his toy room, he now could proudly say that he fulfilled his duty as a hunter. Except there was one thing that only Cal and Toby knew. And that I was understanding at that moment. The person, they prey, had been alive in the hut and it was my first kill, not Toby's.